Is 65k per annum enough to live off of in New Zealand? Welcome to AfriKiwi, where I get into the nitty-gritty, all the questions and all the answers about how life is in New Zealand. If this sounds like something that would interest you, please watch till the end of the video, like it if you found it useful, and don't forget to subscribe. Often I see on social media people asking, I've received a job offer for 65k, is that enough? Or 70k, or whatever the case is. And having never been to New Zealand and not knowing what the cost of things are, it's very difficult to tell if you'll be able to make that work. It's nothing worse than packing up your entire life, moving to another country on the other side of the world, and find out, oh, we're not making it. The first thing you need to ask yourself is place. Where are you potentially staying? Are you living in Auckland or Wellington, one of the bigger cities, or are you going to a smaller city? Auckland and Wellington, notoriously bad rental prices or property prices. They're really, really bad, and that will take up the biggest chunk of your money. 65k should be sufficient for one person in Auckland or Wellington, maybe two people as well. And that leads me to the next question, is how many people? Is it just yourself? Is it your partner as well? Is it one child, multiple children? And that's the thing. 65k per annum in Auckland could probably be sufficient for two people. The minute you start adding more people, it becomes a lot tighter. I would say probably 70k for three people, 75 for four. But again, that in itself is still a tight budget. You would still not have any room for any emergencies. The next thing is lifestyle. What kind of lifestyle do you have in South Africa, and what kind of lifestyle do you want in New Zealand? Right, the same lifestyle would cost you a lot more. So if you have a gardener, a maid, a swimming pool, the flashiest, lawniest, newest Mercedes-Benz, then you possibly won't have the same lifestyle in New Zealand. Certainly not on 65k. So you may need to see what you're comfortable with. You may also need to downgrade in terms of takeaways. You know, if it's sneaking a pie every time you fill up, or if you're having McDonald's or Spur or whatever every week, you may not be able to have the same. So it really depends on the sacrifices that you want to make. So what I've done is I have produced a little table in really fancy Excel, I know. It's basically a list of what your expenses would be, and it gives you kind of what your income is, so you kind of have an idea of what you're looking at. So I've given three tables, high, medium and low, right? And then I've given all the different expense categories. These are not limitless. There are more possibly that you could add, and but this just gives you a bit of a baseline, right? So rent, like I said, the most expensive, but it's not like South Africa where the rental price is determined by the crime in the area. It's really, that can have an influence, but not a major one. It's really what good schools are in the zone, what type of schools. The other thing is, and don't be alarmed by this, if there's any gang pads nearby or anything like that, that could also drive the price. And the other thing is social housing. So if there are social houses close by, that might influence the price. So, for example, rent high. Some places would charge you for 3 or 4 bedroom place. That's the other consideration you need to have. How many bedrooms do we really need? The lower end, you're looking at $500 per week. Medium, in a nice-ish area, a little bit bigger, is $700. And high would be $1,000. That would be either a bigger house or an okayish place in a very fancy area. Then groceries, and I'll go over this with one of the other videos, but the different supermarkets will have different prices. We've factored in for a family of 4, $300 per week, and that's sticking to budget. That's low, that's no takeout. $400 if you want to have a little bit fancier food or want to shop at one of the more fancy supermarkets, and then $500 if you really want a lavishish lifestyle. Power, depending on what supplier you would have, you could spend $25 a week. up to $50 a week. Check below. I've got a link to Powershop. If you're coming to New Zealand and you're looking for a power supplier, I found that they're good, and I'm not just saying that. If you use them, you get $100 off, I get $100 off, so we both win. But they're really, really helpful. I found them to be the cheapest. I have also found them to be the most helpful. Right, water, anywhere from $10 to $20 per week, depends how much your family uses. Cell phones, again, in another video I'll go over which cell phone providers I think are best and how it all works, but you can factor anywhere from $5 to $20 depending on what you're looking for, and that's normally just the plan, so that doesn't include a phone, so you might need to factor that in separately. Internet, again, $15 to $50 depending on your supplier, as well as depending on what type of connection you have. Vehicle costs, so that should actually be travel costs, can be anywhere from $25 a week to $100 a week, depending on how far you work from where you live, depending on things like if you take public transport, so those factor that in. That's for one vehicle or for one traveler, so you would need to adjust that accordingly if you have more people. Insurance, vehicle insurance, that's what we're really looking at. You might also want household insurance, so that might be a little bit higher. You need to factor that in. Subscriptions, so that would be things like Spotify, things like Neon, which is the local streaming service, Netflix, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, anything like that, I've factored in there. So if you've got all the stuff, you're probably looking at $65 per week. All right. And then entertainment, that's just for other stuff, sundry stuff, so maybe a little bit of takeout here and there, or a little chocky when you go to the dairy. That's what we factored in there. And the last one, which is also quite expensive, is going to be childcare. So we have found for ourselves that my wife staying at home is actually cheaper than her going and finding a job, putting the kids in daycare, and earning a salary. It sounds really silly, but the amount of money that she would land up, we would have more money at the end of the month, but the amount wouldn't be worth the things like missing out on their school, if they've got any activities at school, any sporting things. So she really does the driving around and the supporting in that way, and we found that works for us. So childcare is very expensive in New Zealand. You're looking at anywhere, let's say for example $7 per hour is on the cheaper range. You're probably looking more like $10 per hour. So if you think about that, that's $40 a day, that's $200 a week extra. So if your children are going to be in daycare or childcare, then you would need to factor that in. Right, so the high costs without childcare, $2,005 a week, medium $1,400, and $970. Right, now that helps you nothing because you don't know what your amount is that you're getting. So I've broken it down into 3, 65, 75, and 85. The next step here, if you look at it, is that's the amount you get per annum. I've taken the liberty of putting your amount per week after tax. So if you're earning $65,000 per annum, you're realistically getting $952 per week. So you would kind of factor in there, right? 75,000, you would probably be a little bit better off, and obviously 85,000, you'd be able to kind of live in that bracket comfortably. I know it looks kind of scary, but that is the reality. You asked the question, is 65k enough? Here is the answer. 65k will get you $952 a week. Depending on how well you budget, how well you stick to your budget, you may be able to make it work.